channel for more content about the history of Ghana.
Hi there. I welcome you once again to our virtual Wasi History TV. In our previous video, we looked at archaeology as a source for studying African history. And today, we are going to look at yet another example of a non-documentary source used in the reconstruction of African history. And basically, we are going to look at oral tradition as a source for studying African history. And we don't also forget that we have already said that oral tradition is one example of a non-documentary sources used in the reconstruction of African history, or the unwritten sources used in the reconstruction of African history. So today we will look at the definition and the issues surrounding oral tradition, and then we will look at, in another video, the advantages or the disadvantages in using oral tradition to study African history. Before we begin with today's lessons, I would urge you to subscribe to the channel and also recommend it to your friends in other schools. So let's look at our lesson objectives for today. So our lesson objectives for today will be that by the end of this lesson or discussion, you should be able to explain oral tradition as a source for studying African history. So what do we mean by oral tradition? All right? What do we mean by oral tradition? And so you should be able to explain and how it helped us to acquire information for the reconstruction of African history. Good. And then our next objectives will be that we should be able to identify the forms of oral traditions that we have. There are some forms of oral tradition. Oral tradition is in two forms, and therefore by the end of our discussion you should be able to identify these two forms and also give examples of these two forms. So you should be able to identify the two forms and also give examples for the two forms. Good. So let's begin with the definition of oral tradition. Now, oral tradition refers to account of traditions about the past, okay? Account or traditions about the past, passed on from generation to generation, by which means by the word of what? Mouth or other method. All right, so oral traditions are accounts that are passed on from generation to generation through the word of what? Of the mouth. So these accounts are recounted to generations over and over again. Past account, traditions past, okay, about the past, which is past, something which happened in the past, which has been passed on from generation to generation by the word of the mouth. So let's give a typical example. Let's give a typical example. You know, for instance, whilst we were growing up as children, there was this story or this tradition which explained why God was far away from man. And in the local Akan, the people of Ghana, they have this tradition which says that, or oral tradition which says that God lived with man initially, but because of man's activity, there was a certain woman, old woman, who will normally pound fufu, and because of the pounding of fufu, the tip of the pistol always, hit God, and therefore kept God, far away from man. And this has been a tradition which we tell generations over and over again. And the most interesting thing is that some of these traditions are actually not found in books. You don't find them in any books. That's the most interesting thing about oral tradition. But it is there. They are traditions which we heard it somewhere. All right. And so you can think around what are some of the traditions, oral traditions that you so remember that was common during you growing up. I've given you an example of one. So let's look at the next one. Now, oral traditions could be in a form of stories. So they could tell you a story. For instance, there is this Akan oral tradition about Anansi telling you stories about Kweku Anansi. It could be in a form of legends. You know legends? Stories about heroic people, right? It could be in songs. It could be in myth. It could be in folk tales, customs, and other forms of music. It could even be in a form of music. For instance, there is this music about Ya Asantewaa, a queen mother of a Juso, a suburb in modern Ghana today, where they sing a song, Koko Inkwe, Ya Asantewaa, Oba Besia, Oni Bonsong, Oni Abrofuko. So, a song that depicts the caliber of Ya Asantewaa. She was actually a queen mother who fought the British in 1900 when they tried to take the golden stool, and some of these, if you travel across Africa, you come across some of these oral traditions. So as you can see, it could be in the form of stories, legends, songs, myths, which are being transferred from generation to generation. So you tell your children's children will also tell their children, and then also tell their children, and then it moves on and on. All right. So as you can see in an image over here, you see this old lady with these children. She could be telling them story. She could be telling them a folk tale or legend. We have legends about a certain chief priest among the Akan known as Okonfo Anoche. All the stories that you hear about this man are all legends. You understand? Most of them are legends. And so, as you have seen in the image here, see, this is a woman trying to, of course, telling them history. And this is very important for studying African history because oral tradition, in the absence of any other sources, oral tradition becomes the main source for reconstruction of African, history. Because most of at times our forefathers, the art of writing was a late event which occurred in Africa, and so our forefathers were not so much, into writing. They did not know how to write or record events, and therefore most of their histories or events were orally said. And so it's a great source. It's a great non-documentary source for reconstruction of African history. So let's look at the two forms of oral tradition. The first form, we have the fixed text type form, and then the second one, we have the free text type. So this is fixed. It means that it is unchangeable. Unchangeable in the sense that it must be transmitted or recounted to the person in the same way. And these are normally songs. All right? So, if the tradition is in songs, you can't alter the song. You have to sing the song as it is to the person you are recounting to. But with the free text type, you are free to actually, use your own words. It's just a normal history, stool history, town history that we already know. But let's look at the definitions proper. So what do we mean by the fixed text type? Now, the fixed text type of oral tradition have an unchanging format and content. So here, two things over here. The format, you can't change the format. So the way it is recounted, you can't change it. The content, too, you can't change it. Okay? And have to be memorized and passed on from generation to generation. So, unchanging format. So, for instance, I gave you an example of a song sung for Ya Asantewaa, a queen mother in Ejuso, a suburb in modern-day Ghana. That song contains history. It contains the deeds of this queen mother. And therefore, if you want to sing that song to somebody else, you can't change the format. It must go the same way. It must be told the same way. The content must be the same thing. And so if you want to recount such event, it means you have to memorize and pass it on from generation to generation. And that is how come we've come to know, of course, the song. I'm not too good at singing the song. I would have sung it well for you. Let's look at some examples of the fixed text type, the fixed text type of oral tradition. So one of the examples we have is words of folk music, and that is what I have just already told you. Folk music, the words or the lyrics. Words of praise songs like the Ya Asantewaa song. So this is it. These are songs sung to praise, heroic people. And then we have words of drum music. An example, we have the Boa Amponsim, Odisika Ato Prada, which then means the king Boa Amponsim, who uses fresh gold all the time. And Boa Amponsim was actually a king in the Ntra, a group of people who live in modern day Ghana. All right, and their drum music, even at festivals, when you hear people drum, when you hear the drummers drumming at festival, very often they are recounting the history of their people. If you don't know what I'm telling you, you can ask people who are actually knowledgeable in that. The rhythm that you hear at festivals and co are not ordinary rhythms. They are actually recounting the history of the people. And one of these, of course, an example of such is the Boa Amponsim in modern day Ghana. Words of horn music. You know what a horn music is? Of course, very often when you are at a festival, you hear people, playing some horn, like following the king. All those are fixed text type. You need to learn and memorize how the pattern goes, the content, the format. You can't change it. Good. I know you are okay with the fixed text type. So let's look at the free text type. Now, the free text type consists of accounts of events. So this one are accounts of events, usually about stool histories. And we say stool history, that is a royal family history, town history, of course, family or village tradition. So these are the normal histories that we normally read about. Town history, a history of a group of people. Now, this type of history is free text type form because you don't have any format to follow. You understand? You just tell the person what you know. Okay, so that is why we refer to as the free text type. You tell the person what you know. It is not compulsory for you to actually memorize or follow whatever. And very often, these traditions are narrated by the linguist, which in the Akan, they call the Achiami or the PRO for the king. If you go to the chief, if you go to the palace, they are normally there to account some of these histories for you. Good. So it's been a wonderful time. These are some try work. I believe that you can actually try your hands on them. Of course. So, of course, thank you for your time. Subscribe to the channel and recommend it to your friends. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.